it. Hello, good afternoon. I had planned to start by introducing Carolina and Gustavo, but the introduction has been made. I'd like to thank Initiative FIS for the opportunity to talk about such a relevant topic. Something important to Brazil and to the world. Let me thank our speakers for this panel who have accepted the invitation to bring their inputs to our discussion. I'm the General Director of Oncology Hospitals at DASA. For 10 years, I was the VP of the medical area of the company when we were only with diagnosis. And we've always had the challenge of doing things differently. We had the partnership with a venture capital fund. And it's something that has changed the way we used to operate. We used to have a turnaround of the company at that time, being a large clinical lab, but we needed a turnaround, we needed transformation, but we knew that there was a transformation coming ahead. Should I focus on the past, on the future? What should we do? And having a venture capture next to us, bringing opportunities, getting to know new companies that served as an inspiration to do things differently, and also providing for acquisitions and additional investments. These were extremely transformative initiatives. The number of opportunities we had and what we could do was out of proportion. It was no use bringing in more people or more capital. And bringing entrepreneurs in-house led to successful cases and also to failure. We've learned a lot. We are still far from what we believe to be optimal. However, what is crystal clear to us is that healthcare transformation, differently from other classical cases of Amazon, Netflix, and others, things are really different in healthcare. It's a much more complex market, especially in Brazil, where we have physicians, HMOs, patients. There are some advantages of corporations in this industry, but at the same time, there are some disadvantages of the model. It is difficult to challenge, and when deciding to go into a new challenge, we should resort to partnerships. So I'd like to hear from you three. The model in which we have an entrepreneur to interact with the corporation is really challenging. This week, we are going to discuss at DASA what can we do to retain entrepreneurs with us? What are the models of relationship between corporations and startups? How can we make it work? And I would be glad to share some of our success stories as well. I'm sure there are many entrepreneurs watching us this afternoon. So tell us, please, what you look for in the partnerships you make with startups. In our case, I tend to believe that the more independent the company is, the higher the likelihood of success. The startup is a priority of the founder, of course, but it's not necessarily the top priority of a $10 billion company that has a number of things going on. But at the same time, you have access to capital, to data, which is really important. But then you have to do with the more bureaucratic side of large corporations. So please tell us what you expect to find in partnerships. Please tell us about your success stories and also your failures. What is the best corporate venture model in health? I think this is essential for the future of healthcare, but there are very few successful cases showing that the things worked out to be fine, reaching a synergy of the best of a startup, of the founders, status quo, teasing, and on the other side, the capital power of corporation, big data, market access, etc. Thank you once again, Carolina, Gustavo Rend, and Gustavo Cavenaghi. And let me start with Carolina. Tell us, what is your take on this topic? Thank you, Emerson. Thanks, FIS Week. Thanks for the invitation to be here. Even before I go into all these issues you've listed, let me give you a very brief overview so that people understand what Wayra is and why am I here. Wayra is the Vivo Open Innovation arm in Brazil, and people are wondering, well, we are talking about healthcare. Why are they here? Well, connectivity. We are here because there is connectivity. Healthcare market has really shaken a lot this previous year. So much has said about the pandemic. And we had been discussing about healthcare for a while, but we still could not see the feasibility of teleconsultation, for example. Nobody really accepted it willingly, but the pandemic came and okay, let's do it. Just to give you a perspective of what Wayra is, it's been in existence for 12 years in Brazil, one of the largest corporate venture capital or open innovation initiatives or corporate program of acceleration or startup relation. We came to Brazil in 2012. It exists since 2011 as an open initiative that wanted to bring them to the Telefónica's company in the world. We don't know whether this is the right model for a corporation to work, but I think it really depends on the corporation. In 2012, it started as a company accelerator. because the maturity of the entrepreneurship market in general, not limited to healthcare, was very immature, especially in Brazil. There were few accelerators and things were built from scratch. There was no liquidity. There was some technology-based company. The name startup already existed, but in 2012, nobody talked about that. So Wayra came to try to foster this ecosystem, creating an ecosystem for it to exist, making partnerships with the Brazilian government startups and other companies. Throughout time, we understood that the ecosystem got mature, and then we decided to see other realities. So some who had left the market and it started to become an entrepreneur, differently from very young, recently grad people. In 2016, 2017, we started seeing people in their 30s and 40s who went out to the marketplace and said, well, there's a pain point there and I can deal with it. As an initiative, we also realized we had to change. And we did so. In 2018, we became the corporate venture capital of Telefônica in Brazil and in the world. And we stopped looking for startup just because they are good scale and gain market and could deal with any company. We started analyzing startups that really had a business potential to the company. Businesses to Vivo means a world of opportunity. We have recently launched Vida V, which is a health digital platform to connect health in different formats, meditation, pharmacy, access to network of physicians at a better cost benefit. And it's not going to stop there. Vivo wants to become an ecosystem of health, and we've also been considering education, fintechs, and we do everything through the mobile phones. We also analyze IoT, so connected devices, connectivity. And why did I want to give you this backdrop? A corporate venture capital, and I don't know if everyone knows what it really means. It is a financial investment in a startup in exchange for a minority shareholder equity with a strategic objective of connecting these companies with the corporation. As Wayra and as one of the more long-lasting initiatives at a corporate level, resulted from the fact that we realized we had to change throughout time. When we see a boom, such as here in Brazil and in the world, many companies saying, well, we have to relate with startups. We have to be close to them. Does it have to be a corporate venture capital? I don't know. But if that's the case, it should support strategically the company with a minority shareholders equity, no exclusivity over the company's business, regardless of doing business with competitors or not, because as investors, we are looking for companies that have a huge scalability potential and we want them to succeed. As corporate venture capital, we want them to do business with us as well. We want to change the reality. As a corporation, unless we reinvent ourselves, we may go out of market. Telefónica has been in existence for nearly 100 years, constantly reinventing itself. In addition to Wayra, we have some other initiatives. Telefónica Ventures invest tickets higher than Wayra. We invest up to 350,000 euros, 2 million BRL per startup. And we were talking that behind the scenes, we follow the round. So there is a leading investor, usually an investment fund, that is going to help the startup in terms of financial growth of the company. And as corporate venture capture, we want to join to offer support, to give our channel, sales channel, revenue sharing, offering services of Vivo and Telefônica in Viravi. It's a partnership with Teladoc. And we have been considering these companies to make connections and invest if they are interested. Now, going into your questions, in our partnerships, we try to have a win-win situation. We want companies to win by being with us, and in turn, we want to win. We are looking for companies to make connections, partnership investments that are going to bring benefits to the startup, generating new revenues and also generating additional revenues to us. There are some cases which are companies that are bringing automation to us and generate savings, for example. I'm not going to go into successful stories or unsuccessful stories. Well, if we think about 76% of the startups just failed within the first 3 years. So lots of wrong things. But we are investing in risks. It is a dog-eat-dog market. It's high risk, but we also want excellent returns and digital transformation. A lot of things have done quite well. We've had over 10 exits, and we have a large amount of our portfolio doing business with Telefônica. And I'm sorry, she's breaking up. It really works out fine because we insisted to carry on. I don't have the formula of the best model, but an important point, in my opinion, is that nothing happens in the short term. Nothing happens in the short term. You need long-term investments. Thank you. Thank you, Carolina. Great, great. Successful cases and unsuccessful cases are just numerous. It depends on the company. And a mistake with one will not necessarily be a mistake with a different kind of company or business. So let me start with Gustavo Ahrends. Gustavo, tell us your experience. Hello, glad to be here. I'm going to say which Gustavo. It's just so great of this experience of CVC. And I am probably the only element which is not a CVC, but I do business with CVCs. And I was talking to Carol and Gustavo. I have a vision, and one of the strategies that Carol pointed out, within the alternative investment world, there are some institutions that make investments in startups. And the corporate venture capital is one way of making an investment. And in our case, we are a venture capital investment fund, which is independent. Norte Venture is a founders fund. So we are founders of technology company. We were created to be connectors. At Norte, we were created to be a fund where we do not lead, we are just followers. We don't state the terms of the negotiations or what the round will be, what the valuation will be. We are more passive. We were closer to entrepreneurs. As our investors are entrepreneurs, we say we are a fund made by entrepreneurs to entrepreneurs. Norte started in the end of 2019. Myself and two co-founders who are also technology entrepreneurs. I came from the financial market. I've always worked with credit, private equity, and venture capital is something new in my skills. I started investing in startups some time ago, but I think the technology has really changed in the past 3 or 4 years, and we might talk about that later, with some international funds coming into market. SoftBank is also SoftBank coming into Brazil is really a landmark. It has changed the modus operandi of investments in technology company, bringing the international standards and a way of empowering really entrepreneurs. At that time, Norte was created similarly to other venture capital funds. And I think corporate venture capitals also started changing at that same time, having a different mindset of companies, of how they could help entrepreneurs and what would be the best practice for technology investments. Norte has this mission of helping entrepreneurs. We have over 65 companies in our portfolio, some of them in healthcare. We make investments in some companies you might know. So Clevo, Neuramedi, Isa Labs, some nice companies that we invested. We are generalistic. There is no specific investments. I have an investment together with Carol in IoT. So we are more generalistic. We see different business models, and each CVC, today we're talking about health, but there are different verticals. And we've seen the progression of CVC. As an investor, and I was talking to Rodrigo Villar about that, you end up learning about the dynamics, characteristics. The market is evolving, and there is a way of doing CVC. I think Carol said something about that, and Gustavo is going to talk about that definitely. There are ways of doing things which can be beneficial to entrepreneurs. How to structure a fund, the importance of having the appropriate vehicle, what you are going to invest in the company for. Is it going to offer your network? Because you end up being a channel, right? You can really leverage the business of an entrepreneur, but provided that you have the right mindset. So I think this is an interesting discussion that we can have after the round of introductions. As a VC fund, I think it's extremely valuable to have a CVC in your table of negotiation, but provided that the investment is correct. If it's invested in the wrong vehicle or wanting to get the entrepreneur from the VC track, well, no rights or wrongs. We do whatever we want, but I am an advocate of entrepreneurs. I believe there is a right way of doing it so that you can create a positive cycle for entrepreneurs to be willing to have a CVC in their cap table so that you can have more corporations coming on board to do it correctly. It's a new market, and this is a very interesting topic. And we've seen different changes, especially in healthcare. We've heard recently of large healthcare companies creating funds and vehicles to capture more of innovation, what they need to change their core business using the new entrepreneurs, the venture capital. It's a trend. really, and the right move, I think. Gathering knowledge through investments in this venture market is really smart. Just have to know how to do it. And as a fund, this is the feeling I bring to this panel. Really sharing our knowledge and the interaction between our markets. So DASA, Wayra, Norte. So how do we coexist? And what can we do differently? And what can we do similarly to empower and help entrepreneurs? I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much for all of you. That's me. That's my idea. Just interaction to really share our thoughts.
Great, Gustavo. Well, Gustavo, please share your thoughts with us. Well, I'm going to respond, or if I could, I would sign under what both of them have said. I really agree with them. The last thing Gustavo said, this is the core of venture capital. It's a business of cooperation and relationship. It's not extreme competition wins. So you win when you can build something and bring to the panel or to the table those who can put different assets within a given round that will favor a company with the least likelihood of failure and the highest likelihood of success. So, how do we relate with the ecosystem and how do we build? If you betray an infestation, you need to build. How am I going to provide return, which is the goal of any fund, and to find good opportunities you need to take something to the table. It's not just the brand or your pitch. You need to add value. Venture capital is not about money, it's about the value that you take to the table. So I come from traditional venture capital, so it was kind of challenging to go to corporate venture capital. When corporate venture is beginning, it's in its first days, in the early days, and we are used to 100% financial world. It's not M&A, it's 100% financial that is there just to hunt opportunities on initial stages of technology for a company to buy. It's an open technology vehicle. So just as the example Carol said, so what Telefonica has built and Wayra is part of that. Same thing with us. If you look at our partners today, as part of both corporations, we have P&D, Innovation, Acceleration Program, Technology and Innovation Hub. So each one of those links has one purpose of being and is building something from a different angle. And corporate capital complements these models and brings things from outside to within. So in terms of CVC models, in answering your question, so these corporate CVC models, they need to be independent and they need to be able to provide confidence to investors that we are here to build something together, to try and give something to them and also take something, but in a constructive way. Because when we have an option clause, say, I want to have some influence that will not build the business, but will provide a one benefit that's 100% for my business and for just for my company, not for the business. Doesn't make sense for the business. And the success of the business is not just good for the company, but the entire synergy that you are going to reap from those companies. So Kortex, we started inside Grupo Fleury, and the idea was to try and build a strategy of open innovation based on corporate venture. The project became too big, and then we decided to have a new brand to go to constitute an investment fund and to operate within a completely independent model and with fund managers, 100% focused on health and saving and and Fleury groups are investors who really understand about this ecosystem. So our core team came from there, others came from the market, but it's about management, not just in Kortex, but we are connected with the core of the company, with the boards of the companies. And this is what we want to take to them. So we have constituted a 200 million BRL fund. We really believe in Brazil, and 100% we have invested. We need to know what's going on in technology around the world. We know where our market is going to, and we need to be a centralizing link for innovation, bringing technology, new businesses, and seeking to accelerate the future vision. So our strategy is based on three major things: diagnostic medicine, which is the core business; personalized medicine, of going from IT applied to health to genomics, proteomics, everything related to precision medicine; and last, our digital health, which is a broader ranging, but it's core for every health company, and digital transformation is the key tone. And it's part of our portfolio in the future. So we look in Series A companies, and we are investing with other groups in whom we trust. We really like to invest with other institutional funds and Series A. And here answering your question, which is the maturity of companies. So for us to be able to create value for the company needs to be at a certain stage that we can add value. And differently from a traditional IVC fund that has been doing this for 30 years, I'm a former entrepreneur. I know the in and outs of all these of direct consumer in this market. This is different. Our assets are TGAPs that have experience in the health market, that can operate as in sales channels, with P&D, R&D, medical area. But for them to have access to those assets, they need to be at a certain maturity level, with a sales level, and that need capital to expedite their going to the market. That's why we have chosen Series A. We could go for Series B, but for Series B, for the profile of our fund, it doesn't apply so much, but we co-invest, and it might be possible to go into something like this. Our value proposition is to take strategic capital to these companies. So we are not here to play the traditional role, nor the founder. We want to support the thesis of those entrepreneurs. Yes, we may lead the round, we may be followers. We are very open to whatever makes sense to the company. Our angle is very simple. How can I invest in a company where I can build value and extract value? So the company is within a market that is very important for me. The team is very good. It's gone through all the criteria that we have for VC. So let's go in, let's build, because in the future, the company will certainly be responsible for generating indirect income for our partners, and new businesses, and the sky is the limit for what we can develop. Something that Gustavo mentioned in the beginning is education. So we joke that everything related to diagnostic medicine is something that we want to know. Biotech is very difficult for us to go in because of the size of the fund, but if it's diagnostic medicine we want to look at, we want to learn, we need to know where our core business is headed towards. So we need to go to the whole world to learn about what everything is doing, what the market is doing, all technologies, and get as close as we can to the market, and not keep all of this within a limited space. And there is another challenge of TVC, not being 100% focusing on investment. It's focused on building strategic value for corporations. And we extract everything that we are doing here, and we can spread it throughout the company. Well, the speech is wonderful, but executing it is much more challenging than just saying. But this is what we are trying to build. A little bit about what you have mentioned here, Gustavo. What do we look for in companies? So it's something that is very unique to VC entrepreneurs. We really want companies to which we can add value, where we can be an active investor, not an active investor in the board, but as we measure value, is the interaction that we are trying to build with the companies in a portfolio. Why did we invest in them? It's not just to put money and wait for the yield and wait for the return. No. So one case that you mentioned that we are a new fund. We went to the market March this year. We have a few good news to release, but unfortunately I cannot yet release them, but this is a very good year. The coolest case is Sweet, is an Israeli company. Just last week, it was elected as the 7th most promising company in digital therapeutics, and this was our first investment. We're very happy with that. City is a platform of engagement and management. We invested them in a Series A, and the main case with them is that today in Brazil, the sales channel of that they have here in Brazil, the Suite has in Brazil, is through a partnership with Saúde D, which is an arm of Fleury Group, and they're serving as a link for them to globalize and to come into Brazil. They are already in the US, they're selling in Israel and in Europe, and now they are having access to Brazil through this partnership. This is a very nice CVC. This is a strategic. We are having access to technology, building something very different, and it serves as a link for them sales channel for this company to have access to the Brazilian market. And lastly, which is the best CVC? Well, there is no. Each company has a different need or a different angle. I want to have an early M&A vehicle, and it's okay. It's a thesis. This is not what we are trying to do here. What we believe that really makes sense is to have independent vehicles or companies, but not necessarily related to M&A. It doesn't mean that there is no potential M&A, but if there's anything in a portfolio, it's going to be a very nice case. But the difference is that they are going to buy the company by their market price and not that there is some kind of trigger that is going to limit. So we want to limit growth because we create something that is unfavorable for us to be able to have access to good operations. Health is a very complex market, heavily regulated with relevant players such as DASA, Fleury, hospitals. It's not a market that is easy to navigate, and this is our value proposal. We want to be a fund that is specific to help companies to navigate within a complex system and facilitate their life in our with our expertise and our health and with experts from other areas so that we can build a thesis that will maximize the return of the companies. That's it. Cool, Gustavo. Very nice. Everything that you said and your standpoint. I have a question for you. We look very much at investments inside and outside Brazil. So we have a partnership, and we had a venture out there looking into health, and we've really thought about their focus. In your experience, and with the vision of Brazilian entrepreneurs, what is the good and bad about companies that you've been seeing in Brazil and overseas? Is there any advantage in international companies that you feel is lacking in Brazil and could encourage our entrepreneurs to focus on, Carol? Wayra is a corporate venture capital that is global, as I was explaining to you, Today we are in 10 countries, and we are focusing in many areas, in many verticals in addition to health. But I think that what is interesting for Brazilian entrepreneurs, if they are interested in becoming a global solution, we believe that you need to start thinking globally from day one. You need to think globally. We can invest in international companies. That's okay, but we look at the synergy with Vivo in Brazil. So Telefónica, both in Latin America and in Europe, and whether there are other Wayras too. And we look if it's a startup that wants to receive an investment, whether it makes sense because they want to have businesses with Vivo opening operations in Brazil, coming here, and then it's going to be directed to Wayra Brazil for us to look at what makes sense in terms of us allocating more value for them to run business in Brazil. If the company is from another country, and Wayra Spain or Madrid or Barcelona would make more sense to be together with that startup because they are much more focused in Europe and trying to work there, then we are going to allocate there. Allocate there is the person who's going to be responsible for it, because we can invest anywhere. And we invest in Uruguay, in Delaware. Now, what we look in terms of international is really what they are bringing in terms of businesses. How are they going to be able to do that? In some cases here in Brazil, we understand, and in health, I think that Gustavo could say something else, but in our area, a company is not yet constituted in Brazil, doesn't have a taxpayer number, has no Brazilian intermediates. It's much more difficult for them to rapidly have business as a corporation in Brazil. And it happens sometimes overseas because it is international, it's focused, and the opposite might happen too. But for us to close a deal, if they want to do business in Brazil, they need to be present in Brazil already, in at least in a B2B terms. Other than that, we try to help our startups to go international and to have businesses through partnerships and investments and through the help that we provide, because we are an international. I don't know if I answered your question, but in terms of technology, we look at many things. I think that Brazilian startups are getting better and better. In Brazil, as I said before, we have a lot of liquidity, things are happening. In the last few years, many companies were sold. So the ecosystem has changed a lot. And so there's a lot of money on the table, everyone is growing. This is not very much the problem today. There are some technologies that are more developed internationally, not because Brazilians do not have potential, but sometimes it's more difficult to develop because of paperwork and other difficulties here. They go abroad and develop it there. And they are developed outside, and this is beginning. And we are doing very well. And it's grown a lot, the market has developed. But for some technologies, we still feel that Brazil is evolving, but not so much. And some of those have gone abroad, and we are trying to bring them back. And it's a difficult market to do business in. Here, speaking about Brazil. And we don't want intellectual capital to run away from Brazil. Okay, Carol. Gustavo, would you like to say something else? Well, I think that, and Carol said a few interesting things. And so we look very much at the local market. I think structurally speaking, whether it is a CVC or a fund, to invest outside Brazil or in Brazil, it's kind of the same because the structures have become very international. So the main Brazilian technology companies, they start offshore. They already have a playbook, Delaware, and then they already have a playbook because Latin America has gone international. So if you look at what we said before, today we don't have uh, local funds. There are foreign funds in Brazil, Brazilian funds going overseas, and Brazil is a major hub. But we are seeing this in Mexico, Colombia, Chile, a little bit behind. But we have kind of an internationalization of Latin America. And when we think of the environment, I think that we are very international in terms of vehicles, sending money, bringing money in. So there has been an evolution in the market. And this was just over the past few years that this changed, because in the past there was a structure, it was not a fund, it was difficult. Now entrepreneurs have learned to receive money from local and international funds, and investors also learned to invest both locally and internationally. I think this is one point that is important to mention in answering your question. On the other hand, when you talk about the opportunities of investing either here or abroad, I think that Brazil is still very new in technology. So access to good companies is not so simple because competition is higher. So a good deal, it's not going to be in the retail market, sometimes not even in families or not even in CDC. They will be in the hands of large funds that entrepreneurs admire, um, and so on. So what happens, in my opinion, is that investing in technology in Brazil is something that is very specific, very niche. It's just for a few. Now, if you want to invest outside, if you're not a Wayra or Telefonica, you already have an international footprint, and that provides you access to good opportunities. Well, yes, Brazil is huge. There's a wide range of opportunities, and there's a giant population that is almost addicted to technology and cell phones, social network. So there's a very strong base and a country with many deficiencies. So yes, we look at things overseas, but there are so many opportunities in Brazil with valuations even lower than Brazil. Well, valuation has been going up, but doing Series A overseas, can ask Brazil. It's like a Series B. Well, the pricing difference is really marked. No matter that in Brazil, rounds have been dollarized, but has been a standardization of investments. So my advice is there are so many local opportunities. And if you're not a global player, there are so many nice things for you to do in Brazil and Latin America. And I would tell you, you don't need to go abroad. So you will be well assisted with good opportunities of major entrepreneurs here in Brazil.
Great, great. Well, with the dollarization, I think Series A are here better than there, right? Just kidding. In terms of entrepreneur, I see no difference whatsoever. Our ecosystem has very mature entrepreneurs, some of them of third cycle, a technical background, and we've seen a lot of nice mature opportunities. What really makes us look outside is to access relevant technologies that are growing in ecosystems that Brazil is not very developed yet. we're still small in terms of innovation and technology hubs here. Hardware, software, biotech, and others. So these are important, difficult opportunities to find. Gustavo has brought that information. One thing is to be a Fleury Sabin here. Another thing is in the Silicon Valley. Nobody knows us outside Brazil. So to access funds of quality is very challenging. But we can have some strategies to access funds abroad, but they are more of a opportunistic thing than something active. The next 4 companies we are going to invest in are Brazilian companies because it really makes sense. It's easier to relate with the company, it's easier to plug them into our system, but we also want to look outside the box, look abroad. How can we create partnerships with the ecosystems which are abroad where we can have access of quality? So fund of funds, solo P, of accessing passively all of that. The investments we made in Israel resulted from a partnership that we have because we are investors in Israel. They trickle in they just come very slowly, but I don't think we have to be naive and say that we will simply go to Silicon Valley and start networking and make investments. No, we need partners who have been in the market for a while. It will spend money and time and then reap the results in the future. If you are willing to invest abroad, you inevitably have to do it. Excellent. Well, it's just close to our last minutes. Let's hear your closing remarks. Carol, Gustavo? Well, my closing remark is companies have to keep their eyes open to good opportunities. Innovation has here to stay, digital transformation. Yes, there are some buzzwords, but unless you innovate, you really lag behind. The world has changed. It will keep on changing. Things change much faster than in the past. Pandemics or market situations tend to speed up things, and we have to be constantly ready. Otherwise, we are just caught by surprise. She's breaking up. What is the right model? It's not necessarily going to be a CVC, only if you have time and money. Expecting things to take place in their own time. In our case, we've been for 10 years and we started having return after 7-9 years. So sectors are similar to that of an investment fund. It takes a long time to collect results, and then we learn how to work with startups. You need good governance in the fund or in the initiative. You need people who understand how to relate. We see many companies opening initiatives, CVC, with people who are not familiarized with that. They think that working with a startup or having an MA of a startup is just like doing it for a company, and that's not quite so. We just get so many weird questions here from the M&A offices, but we have to try to clearly understand what your corporation is trying to obtain in the relationship. If it's something, well, we have no time and we need technology, good, M&A can be an option. But if you want to do something in the long run, start with LP, access the market differently, make a benchmark, and understand what is the correct strategy for your company. But I think it's good. It's a path with no return. And that's what we are here for, to help you. Just contact us at any time. In terms of investment strategy, everyone should consider alternative investments and think about different investors. Brazil and the world, through entrepreneurship and investments in technology and education, we can really make a change. As an investor, you are playing a very important role, regardless of how you do it. The only thing that I normally ask is always think about the entrepreneur. This is the person running a risk and pursuing his or her dream. So if it's CVC, venture capture, PI fund, regardless of the medium, always put yourself in the entrepreneur's shoes and try to do the best. This is my take-home message, regardless of being a CVC of health, retail, or VC early, late. The most important thing is to have the right mindset. This is the message for my take-home message. Thank you very much for your attention and invitation. Thank you, Gustavo. And Gustavo, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's been great to talk more about our initiative and talk about the system that we really love. Sometimes we go out, take a beer, and talk about venture capital. But the market for entrepreneurs, not all business need to raise capital through funds. Not all business needs exit and play the game. Entrepreneurs who are building businesses in this area of technology just observe their own business models, try to understand what makes sense. Try to get that meaningful relationship, not only amount and brand, but which are the companies that are going to add value, because equity is the most, it's the highest price you can pay for anything in your career as an entrepreneur. So just do a good deal with your equity and bring the right people to the table. Thank you. I think that those comments were really useful for those making deals, regardless of the side where people are. Searching for partnerships with entrepreneurs will be much more enriched after this conversation. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank Carolina, Gustavo Ahrends, and Gustavo Cavenaghi for the excellent conversation. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.